Nice.
Good.
No way!
You've got some fight in you.
What's good, everybody? It's BBKDRAGOON here with my first round of Destiny 2 PvP tips. I'm really excited to start this new series in which I'm going to be walking you guys through as many tips as I can to help you become a better Destiny player. For those of you who are new to the channel, I've been creating Destiny tips since before the beta, back during the alpha. I've played the game consistently since then. Not the greatest player, but I am a student of the game who tries my best to learn and share what I can with you all so that you can hopefully have a more fun experience in Destiny PvP. So today I want to talk about what weapons to use, when, and why. I think this is probably one of the most important places to start. Usually my tip series begin with things like, what button layout should I be using? What sensitivity should I use? How do I increase my aiming skills? And while we will cover those tips in this series, I think the number one thing that players need to adjust and adapt to in Destiny 2 is the importance of the new weapon system. The kinetic and energy weapon system have completely changed one of the biggest and most core fundamentals of Destiny PvP, which is what weapon to use, when, and why. So today I'm going to be covering that in detail. First, we need to talk about the importance of decisions. Decisions are informed by resources. So in Destiny 2, you have resources, and which resources are available to you will help inform the decisions that you make throughout the match. These are just like resources in Street Fighter. How much meter do you or your opponent have? Or resources in a game like StarCraft. Do you have enough Vespene gas to build that factory and to get out the tank? These resources, in conjunction with map knowledge, will help you make the correct decisions and take down your opponents easier. This is all coming back to effective range and the use circumstances for those effective ranges. Every weapon in Destiny 2 has an effective range and an ineffective range. Learning when to identify what part of the map you're on and how to pair that in conjunction with a weapon that has an effective range in that area is how you will see immediate success in PvP. In order to understand this fully, we kind of have to dive back into the Destiny 1 weapon system and compare how it's changed to Destiny 2. In Destiny 1, you really only had one primary weapon slot. In the slot, you could put things like hand cannons, pulse rifles, auto rifles, and scout rifles. In your secondary slot in Destiny 1, you had things like fusion rifles, sniper rifles, shotguns, and sidearms. What they did in Destiny 2 is they basically took almost all the weapons that existed in the secondary slot in Destiny 1 and moved them to a power weapon. That's like your third slot that requires the purple ammo bricks, okay? And in Destiny 2, in both your primary and secondary, your kinetic and energy slots, you can have weapons like hand cannons, pulse rifles, auto rifles, scout rifles, sidearms, and SMGs. This is essentially like having two primary weapons in Destiny 2. This is so important and will inform you on how you're going to pretty much engage in all of your fights in PvP. If you were to go back 2 years ago or 3 years ago and tell the Destiny 1 player, hey, you can have both a hand cannon and a scout rifle at the same time. Do you know what a bombshell that would drop on the meta? Or, hey, you can actually have yourself an auto rifle and a pulse at the same time. This is a huge deal and is why I'm covering it in the first video. Because that Destiny 1 player could then have a hand cannon for his close range engagements and a scout rifle for his long range engagements. It essentially means you get to create a kit that is ultra effective for the map that you're on. And this, in tandem with map knowledge, is what's going to inform you on what weapon to have out in what situations. So you'll see on this map in particular, it's very close sightlines for the most part. There's a few longer sightlines, but for the most part, it's very up close and personal. This is why I'm using a hand cannon. This is also why I'm using an auto rifle in my second slot. If I wanted to be more versatile and play some of the longer sightlines, I'd probably throw a scout rifle into my energy slot, or just make sure that I have a well-rounded kit that's capable of playing at all effective ranges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a chart of all of the current primary weapons in the game, the kinetic and energy weapons, and try and show you where their effective ranges are so that you can make the best choice possible when you're playing Destiny 2. So I've put together this chart. My graphics are not the best, but I hope this can sort of communicate the effective ranges for these weapons. So let's start from the top here. with hand cannons. Hand cannons are awesome in the close to mid range. You want to note here that at the ultra close, things like sidearms and SMGs will probably outperform them, as will auto rifles. You can be a very good player with them up close and personal. It's just sometimes a little bit harder to land your shots, and like I said, sidearms and SMGs generally will kill faster in that ultra close range. At anything past the mid range, sort of this segment of the bar, you really have to time your shots with hand cannons because the damage fall off starts coming into effect big time. Now, the impact and range stat of your hand cannon is going to play into how quickly you can take an opponent down at these ranges. The range stat especially, that's really what's directly tied to the damage fall off point. So if you're past the mid range, really time your shots and let the hand cannon fully reset before you go in and try and take that extra shot. Basically, you can still be good with the hand cannon in you know, this portion of the bar, but it's going to require you slowing your shots down significantly. And there are other weapons that perform much better in these longer ranges. Pulse rifles are amazing, okay? They are fantastic in mid-range, they're fantastic in mid-long range, and some are actually really good actually at the long range. It just depends on the range stat and the type of pulse rifle that it is. But for your mid to mid-long range battles, pulse rifles are really good. You can kill up close with pulse rifles. They are just a very useful weapon to have in your arsenal, but for holding down sight lines and just controlling areas of the map from the mid to long range sight lines, they are exceptional. Very strong weapon that it's a reason why many players use them quite often throughout the different metas of Destiny 1 PvP, is they offered a very versatile set of effective ranges. Auto rifles. Auto rifles are finally good again, and they're really fun to use in Destiny 2. They are awesome in the close to mid ranges. They do start to lose their effectiveness in the mid range, and they are not useful whatsoever in the long ranges. And when I say useful, remember this chart is sort of comparing if you had two people of the exact same skill level who don't miss their shots, who went up against one another in just a blank empty space, who would win the fight. That's really what it's comparing here. You don't have to be constrained by these, you know, certain range values. You can play and perform above and beyond. Let's say if your strafing's really good or your accuracy is better than your opponents and you surprise them. We're just sort of saying in an ideal set of circumstances, if both players ran into one another, landed every shot, and they were just perfect, who would win the fight? Autos, you need to be landing precision headshots, and these are a really good weapon to have on you because they remain pretty effective in this sort of close mid range and in an area that sidearms and SMGs do not really remain effective in. Scout rifles are going to be your bread and butter for long sight lines, and right now scout rifles are very good. I would recommend you try and complete your Mida multi-tool exotic quest as soon as possible, because this weapon is just brutally strong on the larger maps within Destiny 2. Scout rifles usually have the farthest out damage fall off, and if you can set up on long enough sight lines and you're landing precision shots, they take down enemies very quickly. They're awkward to use up close and in the mid ranges. You can use them, you usually can have success with them, but oftentimes they have scopes on them that are just a little bit longer and make fighting up close quite a bit more uncomfortable. So if the scout rifle player comes around the corner and there's an auto rifle player, the auto rifle will usually win. Sidearms and SMGs are both really cool up-close weapons. Sidearms are pretty much really uncomfortably close. Like, that's where they're going to be effective. Anything getting close to the mid and long range is pretty much useless, but up close and personal, especially on tight maps where you're going to be charging or rushing down the opponent, sidearms are very good. Now, you may note here that I've given SMGs just a tiny bit further of their effective range rather than the sidearms dropping off a little bit sooner. And this is purely perk dependent and SMG dependent. There are some SMGs that really lose their effectiveness, like right here. That's where the damage fall off, you know, really starts to kick in. And there are some sidearms that can push this out a little bit. But the important thing to note is for both sidearms and SMGs, they are effective at ultra close ranges. They are the best choice for ultra close engagements, and they are not something you want to be using ever in the mid or the long range if you can avoid it. And remember, like I said, this chart is just a rough visualization of the ideal ranges. All of these weapon categories can be used and excel outside of these boundaries depending on the player. So then, how do we apply this practically? Well, when you fight somebody up close, or you know you're going to be fighting somebody up close, you want to have out a weapon that does well up close. Vice versa, if you're going to be engaging with somebody over a long sight line, pull out your scout or pulse rifle. It's pretty simple, really, but it's very, very core and important, and for the experienced players, I know this may seem a little bit like, I know this BBK, but engrave this into your brain, because this is probably the biggest change between Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. When you're looking at your radar, when you're looking at the resources you have available, like your grenade energy, your class ability, is your melee ability up, do you have super? All of that information is what you're going to use when you make decisions on how to engage with the enemy. The radar plays, again, a big role. So you're basically being fed information 24/7 about an enemy could be here, he might be engaging on me, I'm on this part of the map. How do I use that information and synthesize the right weapon decision choice? I do need to make an important note, as you just saw there. Your energy weapon, basically your secondary slot, deals bonus damage to opponents who are in super form. That's why you'll see experienced players, when they hear the super pop and they're being engaged on like that, pull out their energy weapon, because it deals bonus damage to an enemy in their super form. Some maps are going to be geared more towards close ranges, and other maps will be better suited for longer ranges. Here for Legion's Gulch, as you can see, it's a lot of tight corridors, which means auto rifles and SMGs, sidearms as well, are going to excel in these tight spaces. Some maps, you're going to want to have a pulse rifle or a scout rifle out to be as effective as possible. As we move along in this tip series, I will try and cover some of those more map-specific things, especially when we get closer to trials, because that matters a whole lot. And as this series progresses, we'll talk about things like button layouts, sensitivity. This is like the best VOOP of my life. I have no idea how that connected, but fusion rifles are incredible. Do not sleep on the VOOP, my friends. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit that thumbs up button. If you have questions about Destiny 2 PvP or ideas for tip videos you'd like to see, please let me know about them down in the comments below. And what would be awesome is if you subscribed to the channel. That way you'll never miss any of my latest uploads, and it helps me out. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one, Guardians.